invasive species is an organism that causes ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it does not belong or where it is not native. An invasive species can be any kind of living organism: an amphibian, a plant, an insect, a fish, fungus, bacteria, or even an organism's seeds or eggs that are not native to an ecosystem and that can be harmful to it. They can harm the environment, the economy, or even human health. Species that grow and reproduce quickly and spread aggressively with potential to cause harm are given the label of invasive. Some examples of invasive species are feral pigs. They will eat almost anything, including native birds. They compete with native wildlife for food sources such as acorns. Feral pigs spread diseases such as brucellosis to people and livestock. Another example is the water hyacinth, which is an aquatic plant in the wild. It forms dense mats, reducing sunlight for submerged plants and aquatic organisms, crowding out native aquatic plants and clogging waterways and intake pipes. Zebra mussels are another example for invasive species. They have spread dramatically, outcompeting native species for food and habitat. It can attach to almost any hard surface. They clog water intake and discharge pipes, attach themselves to boat hulls and docks, and they even attach to native mussels and crayfish. The invasive species affect the food chain by spreading new diseases. The loss of a species affects the other species in the food chain and reduces the diversity of the planet. So if one species is removed from the food chain, everything would change. And meanwhile, the animals find a way out to get accustomed to the new food chain. Species will be disappearing, and so the diversity of the planet will be reducing. In a food chain, the sun's energy helps the producer, a plant, to go through the process of photosynthesis and produce food. The producer of the food chain is the one that creates its own food, which is in most cases a plant. The primary consumer in this food chain is a grasshopper, which eats the plant as food and uses its proteins for its own wealth. The secondary consumer in this food chain is a spider, which eats the grasshopper and gets the nutrients from both the plant and the grasshopper. Another example of a secondary consumer is a shrew, which eats the spider that previously ate the grasshopper. Another secondary consumer in this food chain can be a weasel, which is quite bigger than the other two and can eat the three examples seen before. A tertiary consumer in this food chain would be an owl, which hunts and eats either a weasel or a shrew. The last consumer of this food chain is a hawk, and it is a tertiary consumer. This hawk can eat the same things as an owl. And the last part of this food chain is the decomposer, which can help break down the dead organisms. Governments are working to educate the public about invasive species. For example, in the United States, international fishing vessels are warned to wash their boats before returning home. This prevents from them accidentally transporting zebra mussels or other species from one body of water to another. Sometimes communities approach invasive species like an invading army. Nutria in Chesapeake Bay destroy the natural habitat, as well as cost local governments and business millions of dollars each year. Environmental groups, business leaders, and government officials are concerned about the harm done by this invasive species. Officials at the Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge in the U.S. state of Maryland worked with the hunters to eradicate 8,500 nutria in the refuge. Hundreds waded into specific areas of the marsh during specific times of the year. They tracked nutria using global positioning systems, GPS equipment, and set traps that would kill the rodents. The hunters moved across the refuge in a massive coordinated west-to-east movement. In winter, the ice on Chesapeake Bay prevented the nutria from swimming away. Hunters could shoot them on sight. The operation took 2 years, but nutria were eradicated from Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge.